are so poor.
We are soon dying.
Poverty is just increasing.
The losses sustained by sub-Saharan African countries as a result of 2 decades of trade liberalization under World Bank and IMF economic programs far exceed the $40 billion worth of debt relief offered by the G8 countries. Trade liberalization has cost sub-Saharan Africa $272 billion over the past 20 years. Had they not been forced to liberalize, sub-Saharan African countries would have had enough extra income to wipe out their debts and have sufficient left over to pay for every child to be vaccinated and go to school. 2 decades of liberalization have cost sub-Saharan Africa roughly what it has received in aid. Effectively, this aid did no more than compensate African countries for the losses they sustained by meeting the conditions that were attached to the aid they received. And these losses dwarf the $40 billion worth of debt relief agreed at the G8 summit in Gleneagles in 2005. If new aid and debt relief come with strings attached that require countries to further liberalize trade, it may well do more harm than good. This has been the story of sub-Saharan Africa over the past 20 years. Trade liberalization has cost 22 African countries more than $170 billion in that time.
You know, these policies of liberalization are pushed from developed countries, but developed countries never used them to develop. Developed countries intervened directly in their development. Even today, EU, USA, they are giving massive subsidies to their people. They are looking for markets for their companies. All these agreements we are signing and we are negotiating, WTO agreement, the EPAs, developed countries are looking for markets for their private sector, for their farmers.
We profile Uganda, a country of 27 million people with 3/4 of the population living in absolute poverty. Liberalization was introduced here in the 1980s. Imports rose faster than exports following trade liberalization, and this resulted in a loss of income for some of the poorest communities in Uganda. Without the fast-paced and forced liberalization, growth could have been higher and poverty reduction faster. When trade was liberalized, imports climbed steeply as new products flooded in. Local producers were priced out of their markets by the new, cheaper, better marketed goods.
We have seen one major change we have seen with the liberalization is the taste change, where not only the expatriate the community, but the local people preferring imported products, both foods, personal care products, mention them, such that we are even importing even things like mangoes. Now, it is upon the local producers to be more aggressive and to show reason why their products are more preferable or should be preferred as compared to imported stuff.
When you look at our farmers, you compare our farmers to the European farmers. The European farmers are subsidized, the infrastructure is very well organized, they have industries. Look at our farmers. Look at our farmers in Luero. Look at our farmers in Mukono, the vanilla farmers. What do you expect if we open up our markets? We are going to become one huge supermarket. We are just going to become consumers. Our economy is going to die. Our agriculture is going to die.
Demand for the kind of things Uganda exports, such as raw materials, doesn't change much, so there isn't a lot of scope for increasing exports. In the long run, production is what keeps a country going. And if trade liberalization means reduced production, in the end it will mean lower incomes. Any short-term gains to consumers will be wiped out in the long term as their incomes fall and unemployment rises.
Liberation has happened in our countries at a very fast pace, which did not even happen in those countries that are asking us to liberalize now. If I may just give you an example, developed countries took quite a number of years for them to open up their markets. But right now we are required as developing countries to basically open our markets. The government is supposed to pull out from everything and leave it to the private sector. This is not working, because if you look at our countries, for example Uganda, it is basically an agricultural country, which means that what are you liberalizing? Are you liberalizing industries? Are you liberalizing agriculture? Because for even the few industries that we've had, if I may just give an example, if you go to Ginger today, the industrial base that used to be there, the small industries that used to be there, are all no longer there.
While some countries in Africa have increased their GDP over the past 20 years, this increase is not as great as it could have been. There are more poor people in Uganda now than there were 20 years ago, some of whom would not be poor today were it not for inappropriate trade liberalization.
We are in a liberalized economy. Now the government only allows in investors and other people to come in with new types of crops. Now the government encouraged people to grow, say, aloe vera. The government also encouraged people to grow the moringa tree. It is in this way that the government always comes in. When the vanilla lost popularity, let me say, the government came in to tell them to grow other income-generating crops, other high-price crops.
Poor farmers suffered most when trade was liberalized. The fall in domestic demand, which results from increased imports, hit them particularly hard. Poor farmers have little access to capital or technology to increase their productivity or improve the quality of what they sell in response to more competition. They compete in an extremely unequal market where imports from developed countries are often heavily subsidized.
Because we've liberalized, not according to our own needs, but according to policies set from without, policies set from outside. And that is the biggest problem. Whenever you liberalize something, not according to your needs, but just because it's a prescription being given to you by the World Bank or IMF, that is the problem. Because this should be more like a demand-driven process. If, like I told you, 80% of our population is basically in the rural areas, which means in agriculture.
Meet Cheune Francis, a vanilla farmer in Mukono. For so many years he was planting coffee as a crop he inherited from his father. But in 2000 he was lured into vanilla farming by cash crop middlemen. He was advised to cut down the coffee and plant vanilla.
Kyantulugunya kubanga nali nsubiro okubanga vanilla ekyakimunnimizza nga manyi nsobola okutumbuka okugenda mu maaso, naye kyankosa kubanga vanilla yakka n'atuuka ku nusu 5 nenzigwamu amaanyi kati awo nensalawo okuyiiya ku magezi amalala.
Without proper information and advice from the government, Cheune cut down all the coffee trees and planted vanilla, hoping to make huge profits. Cheune made good money the first 7 months of sales, but that wasn't going to last long. Vanilla prices around the world plummeted to an all-time low, and also rip-offs by the middlemen aggravated matters. Today, with a family of 7 plus his aging father, Cheune is desperately poor, searching for answers to what went wrong.
Awakawuli nali netuusaako buli kimu, naye kati tekikyasoboka. Sikyasobola kwetuusaako ekyo kye nali njagala. Okwetuusaako nga sukaali, akanyama ngaako, sabbuuni, abaana basomera mu masomero siga bisulo ate nga nandyagadde basomereko ku masomero g'ebisulo. Amafuta nago bbeeyi yaago eri waggulu ate sisobola kubanga nsobola okufunayo banusu nga 10 naye nsobola okugulayo obwendo bwenguzeeyo bwe bulumi obwo bwendimu.
When the vanilla attracted a lot of farmers, a lot of growers, eventually it had a problem. The problem was both local and international. International in a sense that the price of vanilla fall, maybe because the other growers in the